Coming up on Primetime News, the Korean government pledges to take the legislative initiative after labor, management, and government representatives failed to reach an agreement on labor reform last night. Rival parties discuss a variety of issues, including improving inter-Korean ties, as Korea's parliamentary audit entered its second day today. The Bank of Korea keeps its key rate unchanged for the third straight month at a record low 1.5%. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Friday, September 11th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. We'll start with Korea's push for labor market reform. The government says some unresolved issues will not stop the legislative process for the reforms.
It's upping the pressure on both labor and management as they failed to reach an agreement by its set deadline yesterday. Kwon So-ah starts us off.
No more delays. Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan announced Friday that the government will push ahead with passing a labor reform bill. Choi stressed the importance of solving the youth unemployment issue and alleviating problems related to non-regular workers.
What's needed at this point is for the labor side to put aside its vested interests for the sake of creating jobs for young people.
The implementation of a wage peak system that would guarantee employment until retirement, but with lower wages after a specific age, should help boost those efforts. The finance minister also urged labor unions of big companies to refrain from walkouts demanding wage hikes, which are disrupting talks on the labor market revision. Choi's announcement came after a meeting among government, labor, and management representatives yielded no results, failing to meet the September 10th deadline.
The main issues of contention are on the better clarifying legislative issues regarding the changing of employment rules and terminating labor contracts.
The latter would refer to firing underperforming workers to raise productivity at businesses. The committee decided on continuing discussion Saturday, but the government claims further delays could make it difficult for the law to be passed this year. The government vowed to go ahead with legislative proceedings with the ruling Saenuri Party next week, regardless of the outcome of Saturday's meeting. However, the finance minister noted that all progress made thus far would be taken into consideration. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
On the second day of the parliamentary audit, inter-Korean issues dominated the agenda as rival parties' lawmakers sought ways to improve relations between Seoul and Pyongyang. Our Ji Myung-gil reports.
The ruling Saenuri Party stressed the importance of strengthening economic cooperation with the North to benefit its citizens, rather than the autocratic regime.
Inter-Korean economic cooperation should help provide jobs for the North Korean people and build industrial facilities that will help North Korea's economy become self-sufficient instead of providing cash for the North Korean regime.
The ruling bloc also said the only way to overcome South Korea's economic obstacles was through expanding economic cooperation with the North, which has resources and workers. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy demanded the lifting of the May 24th sanctions against North Korea for the sake of enhanced economic exchanges.
We must lift the May 24th sanctions in order to expand economic cooperation with North Korea. It's prohibiting economic cooperation like the suspended tours to Mount Kumgang. South Korean companies that invested are struggling with serious debts.
Seoul imposed sanctions on Pyongyang in 2010 in retaliation for the North torpedo attack on a South Korean Navy vessel. Concerning family reunions for those separated by the Korean War, the MPAD said the event must be held no matter the circumstances, even if a North Korean missile launch occurs next month. Experts say a missile launch is possible as Pyongyang will mark the 70th anniversary of the foundation of the North ruling Workers' Party, which falls on October 10th. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Staying on the parliamentary audit, lawmakers also presented data showing the increasing frequency of Pyongyang's attacks on South Korea and hefty damages from them. Our Connie Kim tells us more.
North Korean provocations increased significantly in 2014 from recent years and at a considerable cost to South Korea. A South Korean lawmaker is citing data from the Joint Chiefs of Staff said Friday that Pyongyang carried out 6 fire attack operations at the demilitarized zone last year, in which North Korean troops deliberately set fires on the northern side of the DMZ with the intent to damage South Korean facilities and gain a better view of the southern side. North Korea's fire attack operations in 2014 burned more than 34 kilometers of South Korea's military communications lines, resulting in more than $66,000 worth of damage. Last year's fire attack operations significantly jumped from the previous year's total of 1. Pyongyang's provocations continued in cyberspace as well. According to a separate lawmaker citing data from Korea Electronic Power Corporation on Friday, North Korea attempted to hack into the KEPCO system 19 times over the past 2 years. The data points out Pyongyang failed to disrupt the network 11 times in 2013 and 8 times last year after failing to breach KEPCO's firewall. The lawmaker also called for strengthened cybersecurity measures, recalling last year's nuclear power plant hacking by North Korea. South Korea concluded that Pyongyang was behind the cyber attacks on a nuclear power plant operator, threatening to release more than 100,000 pages of data on the nation's nuclear power plants. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea's chief nuclear envoy Hwang Ji-hye will be in Washington next week for talks with his U.S. counterpart Sung Kim. A series of events have been lined up for the members of the stalled six-party talks in the coming weeks. But will such diplomacy be enough to bring North Korea back to the negotiating table? We turn to our Hwang Sang-hee for details.
Preventing North Korean provocation will be on top of the agenda at Wednesday's nuclear talks between South Korea and the United States. Seoul's foreign ministry said Friday that the respective chief nuclear envoys will assess the situation on the Korean peninsula following the landmark inter-Korean agreement in August and South Korea's summit meeting with China. Hwang Ji-hye is expected to brief his U.S. counterpart Sung Kim on the results of the China summit and seek stronger trilateral cooperation for denuclearizing Pyongyang. The meeting comes amid speculation of a possible long-range rocket launch by Pyongyang next month to mark the 70th anniversary of the founding of its ruling Workers' Party. The officials will try to seek progress on North Korea's nuclear program through a string of meetings lined up among the members of the long-stalled six-party talks. The multilateral dialogue involving the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia has been on hold for nearly 7 years. Despite the flurry of diplomatic activity, experts say things will hinge on North Korea's next move.
The question is, North Korea is going to be interested in negotiating with the other 5 countries. China and the United States can cooperate along with South Korea to hold the talks, but if North Korea doesn't want to, then this isn't going to happen.
Experts add that Beijing must put words into action to effectively pressure Pyongyang regarding its nuclear ambitions. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And the second official 2+2 meeting between Korea and Australia was held in Sydney earlier today. Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and Defense Minister Han Min-gu held talks with their Australian counterparts, Julie Bishop and Kevin Andrews. During the meeting, the ministers signed a blueprint to strengthen the two nations' bilateral cooperation in defense and security sectors. Foreign Minister Yoon told the press that the two countries were able to reconfirm their relationship as true partners through today's dialogue. Korea only holds such ministerial talks with Australia and the U.S.
Korea and Jordan have signed an MOU to cooperate in developing electric power and renewable energy. The agreement came as President Park Geun-hye held talks with King Abdullah II on Friday in Seoul. Korea's presidential office expects the deal to help domestic energy companies to expand their presence in the oil-poor country. Also during the meeting, the two heads of state agreed to further discuss economic cooperation in other industries, including healthcare and textiles. Korea's central bank has kept its key rate unchanged at 1.5%. It's waiting to see what the Federal Reserve decides to do with its interest rates and for the dust to settle following the recent economic turmoil in China. Our Shin Se-min reports.
The Bank of Korea left its key rate unchanged at an all-time low of 1.5% for the third straight month. Friday's freeze came as the central bank gauges the economic shockwave of a possible rate hike by the U.S. Federal Reserve and China's volatile market.
While domestic consumption is expected to recover, external economic circumstances still pose greater uncertainties over the country's growth path.
He added, however, that the impact of the Fed's rate hike will be limited on the Korean economy due to the country's strong economic fundamentals. But experts say further rate cuts to prop up the economy are unlikely down the road.
Considering that the falling exports are due to slowing global demand, the room for possible rate cut has diminished, at least compared to last month.
Korea's outbound shipments have been posting negative growth since the start of the year, falling nearly 15% in August, the biggest drop since 2009. The central bank added that the key rate is at a sufficient level to spur growth as the country's economic recovery is on track despite global economic uncertainties. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Google has rolled out its new payments platform, Android Pay, a rival to both Apple Pay and Samsung Pay. The system will allow users to make payments at more than 1 million locations in the U.S. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
Google's Android Pay has become the latest to jump on the bandwagon. The new payment platform will be available on smartphones that have near-field communication capability, running on Google's KitKat 4.4 Plus operating system. Like rivals Apple Pay and Samsung Pay, Android Pay allows you to make payments with a simple tap on your phone once your credit card details are stored. Banks which will accommodate the service include Bank of America, U.S. Bank, and PNC, with Citibank and Wells Fargo set to join in the next few days. Google's latest move is expected to intensify competition in the mobile payment services sector as more companies encourage consumers to use their phones rather than plastic to make payments. What's more, Samsung Pay is set to launch in the U.S. later this month. Since its launch in August, Samsung Pay has enjoyed success in Korea, with the company saying an average of 25,000 customers have used the service each day. And giving it an advantage over Apple Pay and Android Pay, Samsung Pay uses magnetic secure transmission technology, which is similar to the magnetic strip on credit cards. This means it can be used at nearly every terminal that accepts credit cards. Although it remains to be seen whether Samsung Pay will be successful in the U.S., it won't be long before we see who will take up the reins in this thriving market, estimated to be worth $1 trillion by 2017. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Moving on, the Summer Davos Forum concluded on Friday. Pioneers of technology and renowned economic scholars gathered for the three-day event in the Chinese city of Dalian. Our Park Ji-won had a chance to sit down with one of those experts to find out just how new consumption patterns will lead to new growth for the future.
Well, looking at the tremendous success of companies like Airbnb and Uber Taxi, sharing or on-demand platforms are really shifting consumer patterns. Well, some say that this new emerging trend is creating new opportunities, while others think that it is disrupting traditional businesses. And what is your view on this?
I'm optimistic about the long-term economic growth prospects for the sharing economy. I think it's good for economies. I think it creates work. It generates sort of productivity by using assets and labor more efficiently. And I think that it disproportionately creates this value for people who are middle class and below, rather than for rich people. So it's growth and inclusive growth. So I'm very optimistic about it.
Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said in his opening address at this Davos forum on Thursday, the sharing economy will be one of key sectors for new growth in the future. Well, do you think that this economy can yield some substantial new growth?
Absolutely. I think that there is tremendous growth potential represented by the sharing economy. It'll certainly be a healthy sort of single-digit percentage, if not more. But if you put it in context, in many countries, the automotive sector is a double-digit percentage of GDP. A lot of the automotive sector will be on demand in the future. And so just that one industry is likely to be a single-digit percentage of GDP. You add to that accommodation and tourism, you add to that like healthcare, you add to that sort of education and training. These are all very big industries, so it's not. It wouldn't surprise me if it was sort of in the low double-digit percentage.
Are there preconditions economies must meet for this on-demand economy to thrive?
One is that you need a large enough fraction of the population to be technologically enabled. That people, a lot of these services rely on people having GPS-enabled smartphones. I also think, there needs to be a sufficient level of trust, sort of like, in society, for people to be able to have enough faith that another person who they don't know too well can give them a place to stay or can give them a ride. And so without that sort of fundamental trust as part of the fabric of society, it's very hard for the sharing economy to thrive.
Well, thank you so much, Professor, for your time.
Art collecting. Most Koreans assume it's a part-time reserved exclusively for those with ample time and lots of money to spare. Well, that may no longer be the case because there's an international movement dedicated to changing that by making artworks more affordable. Our Kim Ji-hye takes us there.
What's your taste in art? Don't know because you never had the chance to learn? Well, prospective buyers will have the opportunity to discover their taste by paying a visit to the affordable art fair in Seoul this weekend, with some 2,000 pieces of contemporary art on display. Visitors can apply for an hour-long free tour to help them navigate.
And if you like what you see, the prices are listed right next to the artworks. That way you can avoid the awkward situation of asking for a price and realizing that it's out of your budget. Prices here start at $420 and go roughly up to $8,000.
And although you might have set a budget and the time to look around, those who are still beginners in art-related matters, like me, would go through a hard time selecting a piece. So I asked the art fair director, Kim Yu-hee, to share some tips.
I'd advise to eye some of the smaller pieces until you're confident of what you want to buy. It can take a trial and error period to not regret your purchases. But I guarantee that the joy coming from collecting art in the end will be all worth it.
This is Korea's first affordable art fair founded by Ro Ramsey. The event was first held in Britain in 1999 and has since been held in more than 15 cities around the world, including London, New York, and Hong Kong, with the aim of making art more accessible to the general public. Kim Ji-hye, Arirang News.
And now for international headlines, we turn to our Bruce Harrison at the News Center.
Today's focus, the United States and the world remember the September 11th terrorist attacks. A U.S. official claims Islamic State is using chemical weapons against its enemies, and rescuers search for nearly 24 people missing in floods in Japan.
Well, Bruce, let's start with our first story. 9/11, considered the worst terror attack in history. How are Americans remembering that tragic day?
Daniel, people are heading to work right now in New York City, and many commuters likely see the skyline that's marked by the tallest building in the city. It stands in place of the main towers of the World Trade Center, which were reduced to rubble in the suicide attacks 14 years ago today. The New York Times reports events are scheduled throughout the day in New York to remember those who died and honor the emergency workers killed. A moment of silence was held this morning, marking the minute the first plane hit the towers. Families of victims then began reading the names of those killed. Ceremonies were also held across the world. In Afghanistan, NATO soldiers marked the anniversary.
As we conduct our mission here in Afghanistan, pursuing our nation's vital interests, it is important to reflect on the reasons why we came here.
The attacks were carried out by Muslim extremists who hijacked planes and crashed them into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a Pennsylvania field. Another reminder can also be seen in the New York skyline, 2 permanent columns of light where the Twin Towers once stood. Evidence is reportedly growing that Islamic State militants are making and using crude chemical weapons. The BBC reports the U.S. has identified the use of mustard agents at least 4 times in Iraq and Syria. The official told the BBC the chemical was being used in powder form, and the U.S. believes IS has a special team building the weapons. The official said he believes the powder is packed into traditional explosives such as mortar rounds. Exposure to the agent can cause blistering of the skin and mucous membranes on contact. And according to the BBC, the U.S. government maintains it's still investigating the claims of chemical weapons use in Iraq and Syria. But the official who spoke to the news agency said many intelligence agencies now believe there's enough evidence to support such claims. Record-breaking rains have devastated central and eastern Japan. The floods have killed at least 3 people and more than 28 others are reportedly missing. Thousands of others are without homes and stranded. Our EG1 reports.
More than 200 millimeters of heavy rainfall poured down on Japan's Tohoku region in Miyagi Prefecture on Friday. Rescue calls continued from inundated homes while rescuers worked against the clock to save those stranded. Japan's weather agency has issued evacuation advisories and warned citizens of landslides and river floods. These severe weather conditions have been caused by Typhoon Itao, which first landed on Ibaraki Prefecture, south of Miyagi, on Thursday, pouring 300 millimeters of rain per hour and claiming 2 lives with at least 21 residents still missing.
I haven't contacted them, but I will start soon.
Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga has said the government is doing its best to rescue those who are stranded, but didn't say exactly how many people are still unaccounted for.
We are still confirming people's safety one by one based on various information right now. No comments regarding the number of missing people.
Japanese authorities are continuing to stay on high alert as another typhoon named Kilo is heading towards the affected areas from the south. 이지원, Arirang News.
The rescues caught on tape have shown people and their pets being hauled away from the flood waters. And that's your international news for now. Have a great weekend.
Although the Korean peninsula will not be directly affected by the severe weather conditions in eastern Japan, Saturday will continue to see rain nationwide with 10 to 40 millimeters of rainfall for Jeju and the southern coastal regions and 5 to 30 millimeters for central parts of the country. And while similar temperature readings as today will prevail for the capital tomorrow, the southern regions will see highs dropping down to the low 20s tomorrow, so it will feel chilly even in the afternoon. So on that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. Seoul will start off at 17 and will rise to 24, while Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan will only climb up to 22 tomorrow afternoon. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 22 and 23, while Dokdo rises to 21. Now, conditions are expected to brighten up again on Sunday with clear and sunny skies throughout the day, but highs will continue to hover in the mid-20s across the nation. Well, that's all for the weather. Good night.
That's primetime news for you this week. Thank you for staying with us.
We'll be back same time next week. Goodbye for now.